Ladies and gentlemen, life is a stage, and not everyone on it plays a noble role. In a world filled with light and kindness, shadows still lurk, hidden in plain sight, disguised in the garb of charm, wit, and sometimes even a smile. But today we talk about something profound. How to spot an evil person before their poison seeps into your life. And first, let's talk about charm. Charm can be a gift, but in the wrong hands, it's a weapon. Evil doesn't wear a warning sign, it wears a mask. They'll flatter you, gain your trust, and make you feel special. But deep inside, they're calculating your every move. Charm isn't the problem, it's the intent behind it that matters. Watch for those who use it to control, to manipulate, and to get ahead at the expense of others. Next is deception. Lies flow from an evil person like a river that never runs dry. These aren't small untruths, they're layers of deceit designed to confuse, control, and destroy. When someone's words and actions don't align, don't ignore it. Evil is like smoke. Where there's confusion, there's usually a fire. Third, pay attention to how they treat vulnerability. An evil person doesn't just walk past the weak, they target them. Whether it's a child, an elderly person, or someone going through a tough time, the evil person sees their vulnerability as an opportunity, a resource to exploit, not a soul to protect. That's the kind of darkness we must stand against. And finally, look for empathy, or the lack of it. Empathy is the heartbeat of humanity. An evil person has no room for it, because they're consumed by their desires, their ambition, their greed. They'll step on anyone and anything to get what they want. Their coldness isn't just chilling, it's dangerous. But let me be clear, evil thrives in silence, in ignorance, in the unwillingness to confront it. Our greatest weapon against it isn't fear, it's awareness. It's looking past the surface, trusting our instincts, and holding tight to our values. Because when we recognize evil, we take away its power. So I leave you with this: stay vigilant, not paranoid, but aware. Watch the fruits of a person's actions. In a world of wolves in sheep's clothing, it's the shepherd who protects the flock. Be that shepherd. Know what to look for, and don't let the darkness overshadow your light. Thank you. Charm is a fascinating quality. It has the power to uplift, to connect, and to inspire. But like any tool, it can be misused. In the hands of a manipulative person, charm becomes a mask, a carefully crafted facade designed to hide true intentions and manipulate others. The mask of charm is one of the most dangerous weapons an evil person can wield, precisely because it's so disarming. It appeals to our desire to believe in the good in others, making us vulnerable to deceit and exploitation. An evil person who uses charm doesn't come across as sinister at first glance. In fact, they often seem like the opposite. They're friendly, approachable, and magnetic. They know how to make you feel seen, valued, and important. Their words are smooth, their gestures thoughtful, and their demeanor inviting. It's as if they've mastered the art of saying and doing exactly what you want to hear and see. This calculated charm draws people in, creating a false sense of trust and security. That charm, when wielded by someone with ill intent, is more than just an appealing personality trait. It's a tool of manipulation. An evil person uses charm to lower your defenses, to make you feel comfortable enough to let them into your life. They'll compliment you, laugh at your jokes, and make you feel like you're the center of their world. In those moments, it's hard to see the truth, because the mask is so convincing. What makes the mask of charm so effective is its ability to exploit human psychology. As social beings, we're wired to respond positively to kindness, attention, and affirmation. We want to believe that others have good intentions, especially when they're treating us well. This is why charm is such a potent weapon. It taps into our innate desire for connection and belonging, creating a bond that feels genuine but is anything but. Over time, the mask of charm can begin to slip, revealing glimpses of the person behind it. These moments are often subtle: a careless comment, a flash of impatience, or a contradiction in their story. At first, these red flags may seem insignificant. After all, no one is perfect, right? But as these inconsistencies add up, a pattern begins to emerge. The person who once seemed so charming and kind starts to show their true colors. Inevitably, the person who once seemed so charming and kind starts to show their true colors. An evil person's charm is not a reflection of their true self, it's a carefully constructed performance. They know exactly what to say and do to get what they want, whether it's your trust, your resources, or your loyalty. They study you, learning your likes, dislikes, and vulnerabilities. Then they use this information to manipulate you, always staying one step ahead. One of the most insidious aspects of the mask of charm is how it can make you doubt yourself. When someone so charming and seemingly genuine does something hurtful or deceitful, it's easy to question your own perception. You might think, maybe I'm overreacting, or they didn't mean it that way. This self-doubt is exactly what an evil person relies on. By keeping you off balance, they maintain control. They clean up the evidence that convinces you that everything is right in the world. It's also worth noting that the mask of charm isn't just about how an evil person interacts with you, it's about how they present themselves to the world. These individuals are often skilled at creating a positive public image. They may be admired by colleagues, respected in their community, or loved by their social circle. This outward charm serves as a shield, making it harder for others to believe any accusations against them. After all, how could someone so likable be capable of such harm? The mask of charm is particularly dangerous because it can create a ripple effect. When someone under the influence of this charm begins to trust the wrong person, they may unwittingly enable that person's harmful actions. For example, a charismatic individual might manipulate one person into providing them with resources or access to others. This chain reaction allows the evil person to expand their reach, drawing more people into their web of deceit. To spot the mask of charm, it's essential to look beyond words and surface-level actions. Pay attention to patterns of behavior. Are their actions consistent with their words? Do they treat others with the same kindness they show you, especially those who can't offer them anything in return? How do they react when things don't go their way? These are the moments when the mask is most likely to slip. Recognizing the mask of charm isn't easy, especially when you're dealing with someone who's skilled at wearing it. It requires vigilance, self-awareness, and a willingness to trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. By learning to see through the mask, you can protect yourself from those who would use charm as a weapon rather than a gift. Deception is an art form for those who wield it skillfully, and for an evil person, it's a craft honed to perfection. Unlike a single lie or occasional lapse, patterns of deception are intentional, sustained, and meticulously crafted to manipulate, control, and achieve hidden goals. Understanding these patterns isn't just about catching someone in a lie, it's about recognizing the repeated behaviors and tactics that reveal their true nature. At the core of deception lies a fundamental truth. A deceiver thrives on creating a false narrative. This isn't limited to words alone. They orchestrate their actions, expressions, and even relationships to align with the story they want you to believe. They weave a web of half-truths, omissions, and outright lies, often mixing just enough truth into their fabrications to make them believable. This blend of reality and fiction is what makes deception so effective and so dangerous. An evil person doesn't just lie sporadically, they live within their lies. Their deceptions are often premeditated and strategic, designed to achieve specific outcomes. They may lie to gain trust, to cover their tracks, or to create an illusion of competence, generosity, or innocence. Whatever their motive, the lies are rarely random. Instead, they're part of a broader pattern that becomes more evident over time. One hallmark of these patterns is inconsistency. A deceiver may contradict themselves when telling the same story to different people, or even when repeating it to the same person. The details might change, or the timeline may shift slightly. At first, these inconsistencies can be easy to dismiss. After all, everyone forgets things or misspeaks occasionally, but when the contradictions pile up, they begin to form a pattern that's hard to ignore. Another key feature of patterns of deception is the effort to control information. An evil person doesn't just lie, they actively manage what you see, hear, and know. They may withhold important details, deflect questions, or steer conversations away from topics that could expose their true intentions. This control isn't limited to personal interactions. They might manipulate their social media presence, carefully curating an image that supports their deception. They understand that perception is reality for many people, and they use this to their advantage. In addition to controlling information, an evil person often employs misdirection. This tactic involves diverting attention away from the truth by focusing on irrelevant details, creating distractions, or even shifting blame onto others. For example, if they're accused of wrongdoing, they might respond with indignation, playing the victim or attacking the credibility of their accuser. This creates confusion and makes it harder to focus on the original issue. A particularly insidious aspect of patterns of deception is gaslighting. This involves manipulating someone into doubting their own perceptions, memories, or judgment. An evil person might deny something they said or did, even when there's evidence to the contrary. They may accuse you of being overly sensitive, paranoid, or misremembering events. Over time, this can erode your confidence in your ability to discern the truth, making you more susceptible to their lies. Deception also thrives on exploitation. An evil person often preys on the trust, kindness, or vulnerabilities of others to further their agenda. They may manipulate someone's emotions, using flattery, guilt, or fear to gain their cooperation. For instance, they might feign remorse to avoid consequences, or exaggerate their hardships to elicit sympathy. These manipulations are often subtle, making them hard to detect until the damage is already done. One of the most telling signs of patterns of deception is a lack of accountability. An evil person rarely admits to their lies, even when confronted with evidence. Instead, they double down, deny, or deflect. They may shift the blame onto others, claim they were misunderstood, or invent new lies to cover up the old ones. This refusal to take responsibility is a key indicator of their manipulative nature. It's also important to recognize that patterns of deception often extend beyond individual interactions. An evil person's lies can ripple outward, affecting multiple people and situations. For example, they might spread rumors, pit people against each other, or create division within a group. These actions serve to consolidate their power, isolate their targets, and obscure the truth. Recognizing patterns of deception requires patience and vigilance. It's not about catching every lie in the moment, it's about observing the larger picture. Over time, the inconsistencies, manipulations, and deflections reveal a pattern that can't be ignored. These patterns aren't always immediately obvious, especially when the deceiver is highly skilled. But by staying alert, questioning what doesn't add up, and trusting your instincts, you can begin to see through the facade. Exploitation of vulnerabilities is one of the most defining characteristics of an evil person. It is not simply an act of taking advantage of others, but a deliberate and calculated practice of seeking out weaknesses to manipulate, harm, or control. This act of exploitation isn't incidental, it is systematic, often cloaked in kindness or concern, and always aimed at serving the selfish goals of the exploiter. They say, if you have the money, the power, and the land to retain control of you. Understanding how evil people exploit vulnerabilities requires a closer look at their methods, their targets, and the devastating impact of their actions. At its core, exploitation begins with observation. An evil person is adept at identifying vulnerabilities in those around them. These vulnerabilities might be emotional, financial, social, or situational. They observe carefully, studying their targets to uncover insecurities, fears, desires, and unmet needs. To them, every vulnerability is an opportunity, a doorway through which they can exert influence and gain control. Exploitation, unlike genuine compassion, which seeks to uplift and heal, exploitation is rooted in selfishness and cruelty, using another's struggles as leverage. Emotional vulnerabilities are among the most commonly exploited. An evil person preys on feelings of loneliness, low self-esteem, or a desperate need for approval. They may offer validation, attention, or affection to someone who craves it, creating a sense of dependency. This initial kindness is rarely genuine. It's a tool designed to draw the target in and make them reliant on the exploiter for emotional fulfillment. Once this dependency is established, the exploiter begins to manipulate their target, often isolating them from others and eroding their sense of self-worth. Financial vulnerabilities are another area where exploitation thrives. Those struggling with money are often desperate for relief, making them susceptible to promises of help or opportunity. An evil person might offer financial assistance or investment opportunities, only to use these gestures as a means to trap their target in debt or dependency. They may demand favors, loyalty, or access to resources in return, exploiting the target's gratitude or fear of losing the financial lifeline. This manipulation can leave the target worse off than before, both financially and emotionally. Social vulnerabilities also provide fertile ground for exploitation. Those who are socially isolated, marginalized, or lacking a strong support system are particularly vulnerable. An evil person may step into the role of a friend, mentor, or ally, offering companionship or advocacy. However, this relationship is rarely as altruistic as it seems. The exploiter often uses their position of influence to manipulate their target, whether by extracting favors, spreading misinformation, or creating division between the target and others. This exploitation not only harms the individual, but can also deepen their social isolation, making them even more susceptible to further manipulation. Situational vulnerabilities, such as a recent loss, illness, or other life crisis, are also prime targets for exploitation. During times of upheaval, people are often more trusting and less guarded, seeking solace and support wherever they can find it. An evil person capitalizes on this, presenting themselves as a source of comfort or guidance. They may offer a shoulder to cry on, only to use the information shared in moments of vulnerability against their target later. Alternatively, they might promise help in resolving the crisis, only to use the situation to further their own agenda. What makes the exploitation of vulnerability so insidious is its subtlety. In many cases, the exploitor doesn't reveal their true intentions until the target is already deeply entangled in the relationship. By the time the manipulation becomes evident, the target may feel trapped, ashamed, or too dependent to walk away. This dynamic is particularly damaging because it often leaves the target questioning their own judgment, wondering how they failed to see the signs. Exploitation is not always obvious or overt. In some cases, it manifests in seemingly small acts of manipulation that, over time, create a pattern of control. For example, an evil person might subtly undermine their target's confidence, planting seeds of doubt and insecurity. They may use guilt or shame to coerce their target into compliance, or employ flattery to gain their trust. Manipulation becomes a weapon in the hands of violence. These tactics are designed to be gradual and cumulative, making them harder to recognize until the damage is already done. The impact of exploitation extends far beyond the immediate harm to the target. It often creates a ripple effect, affecting the target's relationships, career, and overall well-being. Those who have been exploited may struggle with trust issues, self-doubt, or feelings of powerlessness long after the exploitation has ended. They may also face financial, social, or legal repercussions as a result of the manipulator's actions. On to their contrary, law enforcement has a great degree of flexibility as a result of the manipulator's actions. Exploitation thrives in environments where vulnerabilities are overlooked or dismissed. It is particularly effective when the target feels isolated, unsupported, or unheard. Evil people understand this and often work to create or deepen these conditions, ensuring that their target remains reliant on them. By isolating their target from potential sources of support, they reduce the likelihood of their actions being exposed or challenged. Exploitation is not a one-time act, but a sustained effort to maintain control. An evil person often returns to the same vulnerabilities repeatedly, reinforcing their grip on their target. They may use fear, intimidation, or even kindness to keep their target in a state of uncertainty and dependency. This cycle of exploitation can be difficult to break, particularly for those who are already struggling with self-doubt or a lack of resources. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, a fundamental aspect of human connection. It allows us to walk in another person's shoes, to feel their joy, their pain, and to respond with compassion and kindness. Empathy is what binds us together as a society, creating bonds of trust, mutual respect, and cooperation. However, an evil person lacks this very quality. This evil person lacks the responsibility and self-responsibility, which takes the better quality. The absence of empathy is one of the clearest markers of a malevolent individual, as it enables them to disregard others' feelings, manipulate situations for personal gain, and cause harm without remorse. The lack of empathy in an evil person manifests in multiple ways. One of the most glaring signs is their inability to connect with or understand the emotions of others. They may witness someone suffering or distress, but feel no emotional response. This coldness is not born from ignorance, but from a deliberate indifference to the suffering of others. While most people would feel moved by someone in pain, a person lacking empathy might view this pain as an opportunity, either to exploit it or to simply ignore it. An evil person might outwardly appear unaffected by tragedy, disaster, or personal loss. They can see others in distress and remain unmoved, continuing with their lives as if nothing of significance has occurred. Their response is not one of compassion, nor is it even one of detachment. Rather, it is one of emotional flatness, a complete absence of the human ability to relate to the suffering of another. They may even take pleasure in another's misfortune, viewing it as a sign of their own superiority or success. This lack of empathy often leads to a pervasive selfishness, where the person is unable or unwilling to consider the impact of their actions on others. They act primarily out of self-interest, with little to no regard for the harm they cause. Whether it's making decisions that hurt others to advance their own agenda, manipulating people for personal gain, or simply disregarding the well-being of those around them, their lack of empathy makes them incapable of seeing beyond their own desires. In relationships, a lack of empathy can be especially damaging. An evil person may feign understanding or concern, but their words and actions are motivated solely by what they can extract from the other person. They might pretend to care about someone's struggles or offer false sympathy, but these gestures are just tools to manipulate or control. Once they've gained what they want, they may abruptly discard the person, showing no emotional attachment or guilt over the harm they've caused. This emotional abandonment further highlights their inability to connect with the emotions of others. One of the most disturbing consequences of a lack of empathy is the ease with which an evil person can cause harm. Without the capacity to understand or care about the suffering of others, they are free to act without conscience. They can lie, cheat, steal, or even hurt others physically or emotionally with little hesitation. Their actions are not driven by a desire to inflict pain, but by a cold, calculating pursuit of their own objectives. Now, the suffering they cause is not a source of discomfort for them. It is merely an obstacle to be overcome on their path to personal gain. An evil person's lack of empathy can also extend to entire groups of people. They might target vulnerable individuals or marginalized communities, exploiting their positions without a second thought. This lack of regard for collective well-being can be seen in those who perpetuate social injustices, discrimination, or inequality. When empathy is absent, the suffering of entire groups is dismissed, and those who are in positions of power are free to exploit and oppress without the moral restraint that empathy provides. Terrorist organizations will get weaker, and their victims will be harmless, and the will to empathize will linger. In professional or social environments, a person devoid of empathy can create toxic dynamics. They might disregard the feelings of colleagues, friends, or family, using others for their own advancement. Whether through passive-aggressive behavior, manipulation, or outright cruelty, their actions erode trust and undermine relationships. Their lack of empathy makes it difficult for others to understand their behavior, leaving them confused, hurt, or betrayed. Even when an evil person does make a superficial attempt at empathy, it is often self-serving. They may pretend to understand someone's pain or offer insincere comfort, but their gestures are calculated to further their own agenda. Whether to gain favor, manipulate a situation, or create an illusion of caring, their attempts at empathy are hollow. This disingenuous behavior only reinforces the notion that their emotional responses are driven by self-interest, not by a genuine concern for others. Furthermore, the lack of empathy in an evil person can make it challenging for others to recognize their true nature. At first glance, they might appear to be charming, successful, or competent, masking their emotional coldness with strategic gestures of kindness or generosity. It is only over time that the absence of empathy becomes evident, as they consistently fail to acknowledge the needs or feelings of others. This emotional detachment makes them capable of extreme acts of cruelty, as they are unable or unwilling to feel the weight of their actions. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of a person's lack of empathy is the way it allows them to justify their harmful behavior. They may view their actions as necessary, justified by their own goals or desires, and they rarely feel guilt or remorse for the pain they inflict. Without empathy, they do not internalize the emotional consequences of their actions. The suffering of others is irrelevant to them. This detachment from the emotional impact of their behavior enables them to continue causing harm without second thoughts, making them one of the most dangerous types of individuals in any society.